News in Asia, 4th of September 2023, is China interested in improving relations with India? China is playing the long game and attempting to trick India while preparing to invade with an expanded army and navy. China's most recent actions toward India raise questions about whether it wants to make peace with the country it has been at war with since the late 1950s. On the one hand, China seems to be trying to make peace with India, but it is also hostile to it and occasionally upsets the apple cart. The recent provocative actions by Beijing appear to have two goals. The short-term goal is to keep India nervous and uneasy in the lead-up to the pivotal G20 summit, which will take place in New Delhi on September 9 and 10. The ultimate goal is to foil India's attempt to become a significant player in South Asia and globally as a defender of the Global South against the US-led Western powers. China aspires to replace the US as the one superpower by leading the Global South and becoming its major ally. G20 Assembly. Prime Minister Narendra Modi of India is eager to promote himself as the Vishwaguru and the voice of the Global South during the G20 presidency. Using the accolades he anticipates receiving at the summit to support his candidacy for a third term in the May 2024 legislative elections is another unstated but no less significant agenda item. However, China is in a blatant attempt to deny India the worldwide leadership it so much wanted to do this. India's efforts must be diminished, if not humiliated, in every feasible manner. It will, therefore, be difficult for Modi to prevent a more overt confrontation between the US and China, the two countries' sworn foes, and an underlying Sino-Indian impasse from tarnishing the G20 conference. President Joe Biden and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping will attend the summit. Russian President Vladimir Putin has chosen not to be physically present to avoid a potentially explosive interaction with Biden regarding Ukraine, thereby sparing Modi from embarrassment. Contrary signals. Xi and Modi's brief exchange at the BRICS summit in Johannesburg on August 24 has, as usual, sent out conflicting messages. While continuing the low-level discussions on the contentious border issue, China conveyed the idea that it was prepared to speak with India variously on topics including trade, investment, and economic cooperation. The two leaders engaged in a candid and in-depth exchange of views on current China-India relations and other questions of shared interest, per a Chinese readout on the meeting. In addition to serving the interests of the two nations and peoples, President Xi emphasized that improving China-India relations is also conducive to peace, stability, and development of the world and the region. To jointly protect peace and tranquility in the border region, the two parties should appropriately handle the border problem, considering the broader interests of their bilateral relations. However, the statement made clear that the Indians had requested the mentor to demonstrate that they were not keen to speak with China. However, Modi brought up India's concerns about the outstanding issues along the line of actual control, LAC, according to Indian Foreign Secretary Vinay Quatra. He also stated that the two leaders had decided to directed their relevant officials to intensify efforts at expeditious disengagement and de-escalation. In another indication that India was not ready to speak, the Indian side said that the meeting had happened due to a long-pending request from the Chinese side for it. Despite their shared objectives, there was a divide between the two groups. However, the remarks sparked expectations for healing Sino-Indian ties, which had frozen following the 2020 incident in Galwan, Ladakh, where Chinese troops, claiming the territory, battered 20 Indian soldiers to death. Humidity depleted. China is poisoning the climate for talks to resolve the border dispute despite the rhetorical resolve to do so. By maintaining Aksai Chin in the north, which India claims, and renewing its claim to the Indian state of Arunachal Pradesh in the northeast, it is continuing to agitate India. About 90,000 square kilometers of China's land are claimed by India in the northeast, including Arunachal Pradesh and 38,000 square kilometers are located on the Oxy-Chin Plateau, which is part of Ladakh in India. The Doklam Plateau and Arunachal Pradesh were included in the most recent standard map of China that China released on August 28. 11 locations in Arunachal Pradesh have had their names altered. Also depicted on the map was Oxy-Chin as being in China. We deny these assertions since they are unfounded. Spokesman for the External Affairs Ministry Arindam Bagchi stated that such actions by the Chinese side only make the boundary dispute more challenging to resolve. He continued by saying that India has formally objected via diplomatic channels. Additionally, China has refused to stamp the visas on the passports of Arunachal Pradesh citizens who wish to visit the country. Because it does not acknowledge Arunachal Pradesh as a part of India, it grants stapled visas. China has objected to India's sovereignty over these regions by refusing to attend G20 component events in Arunachal Pradesh and Jammu and Kashmir. These are not good odds for the G20 summit's success for Sino-Indian ties. Absence of adaptability. The inflexibility of the Chinese side is one of the leading causes of the lack of progress in the 19 rounds of ground-level negotiations on the border issue that have been undertaken thus far. Although the Chinese are adamant about going back to the positions of 1959, certain Indian generals who appear on YouTube programs claim that the Chinese are unwilling to define the line of actual control, LAC. In an effort to prevent conflicts, buffer zones have been established by the discussions, yet, in many instances, China benefits from these zones more than India does. This is because the buffer zones have caused China to gain land and India to lose territory. The Chinese needed to retrace their original 2 steps forward to establish the buffer zones. Conversely, India has experienced land loss due to the buffer zones. Using the ill-defined border, China has gradually crept into Indian territory. It then claimed these areas because, as Lieutenant General H.S. Panig stated in an interview with The Print, occupation is 9/10 of the law. Objective political. Lieutenant General Prakash Menon claims that China sees a significant political component to the border negotiations. He claims Beijing utilizes its military to restrain India and prevent it from becoming a dominant force in the region, not to resolve the border conflict. China's ultimate objective is to undermine India on the subcontinent and lessen its capacity to contribute significantly to China's continuous conflict with the United States and its allies. Furthermore, India's response has been reserved due to its current military and economic asymmetry with China. And China is taking advantage of that. Beijing is unwaveringly putting India to the test throughout its backyard, including Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal, and Sri Lanka, not to mention Pakistan, which has traditionally been an ally of China against India. Hurry up to the U.S. However, China's policy of intimidation drives New Delhi to align itself with the US and the West, China's declared foes. Due to China's inability to resolve the border dispute, support for terrorists operating out of Pakistan, and encroachment into India's traditional spheres of influence, India was compelled to join the US-led Quad and reject Beijing's premier international development initiative, the Belt and Road Initiative. China stands to gain much from India's cessation of harassment, given that India is the largest market in Asia. Additionally, India might be a constructive development partner to shift the center of global power from the US and Europe to Asia, given its strengths in both technology and labor. To accomplish this goal, President Xi Jinping does advocate for Sino-Indian collaboration, but he does not recognize India's historical and sovereign rights and its proper place in the international community.